Have you ever reached the very thing you thought would finally satisfy you? Grasp success, love, or recognition with both hands, only to feel a strange emptiness settle in even deeper than before. That very hollowness is not a flaw in you, but a clue, a reminder that the human heart was shaped for something more than this world can ever provide. We spend our days building careers, collecting possessions, and chasing applause. Yet when the noise dies down and the room grows still, we often find ourselves haunted by a silence no achievement can fill. This is not greed, nor weakness. It is homesickness, a longing for a place we have not yet seen but somehow recognize, and like a bird in a golden cage with the finest seeds, but no sky, we find ourselves restless, not because we lack food, but because we lack flight. The human soul was made to breathe the air of God, and when it is denied Him, it thrashes against the bars of even the most comfortable life. Wealth cannot silence the ache. Relationships cannot erase it. Pleasure cannot cure it. For we were created with a God-shaped hunger, and until that hunger is answered by the one who made us, we will keep mistaking salt for water and wonder why the thirst only grows. But when His presence enters the void, something remarkable happens. The cup, once dry, begins to overflow, not only quenching our own need, but spilling into the lives of those around us. This is why the first step in any true pursuit of God is to name this hunger honestly, to see that the ache in your heart is not an enemy but a compass. It points you away from illusions and toward the only one who can make you whole. And if you pause to listen closely, you may discover that what you thought was your search for Him has always been His call to you. Let me ask you something very personal. Have you ever noticed how easily your heart drifts? How even when you set your mind on prayer or decide you will seek God with more intention, within minutes you are pulled away by noise, by tasks, by endless little urgencies. We tell ourselves we will return to Him later, when things are calmer, when life is less crowded. But laughter so often never comes. It is as though our souls are willing, but our habits are traitor. This is why the psalmist speaks with such intensity when he writes that his soul follows hard after God. It is not a casual stroll. It is not a faint interest. It is the picture of someone pressing forward with all their strength, straining toward the presence of God as if nothing else matters, because in truth, nothing else does. If you think of your own life, how many mornings have begun with rushing rather than resting in Him? How many nights ended with exhaustion instead of reflection? We do not intend to neglect God, but the neglect grows anyway, like dust settling day after day until the heart feels dull. And yet deep inside you know you want more. You want to break the cycle of distractions. You want to run after God, not half-hearted, but with hunger. So I want to pause here and ask you, are you willing to begin that pursuit today? Not tomorrow, not when life slows down, but right now, in the midst of your present chaos. If you are, then I invite you to take a very small but very real step. Declare it openly. Type the words, "I'm ready" in the comments, or even just write the number 1. That single gesture may feel simple, but it is a mark of courage. It says, I am not content to stay where I am. I long for more of Him. And for me, speaking here to you, that moment is priceless. It tells me I am not speaking into an empty room. It tells me your heart is awake, listening, willing to change. And that presence, Your presence is a gift to me. As I share these words, I thank you deeply for it, because this pursuit of God is not meant to be a solitary journey. It is meant to be shared. When you say, "I'm ready," you are not just encouraging yourself, you are encouraging me. And you are bearing witness before others who may be hesitant that you dare to begin. So I urge you, do not let this moment slip by. Do not wait for a perfect season that may never arrive. Lift your heart now. Make that choice. And let the pursuit begin with one small declaration, one step toward the one who has been waiting for you all along. There is a truth that unsettles me, and I believe it may unsettle you too. The truth that God has never promised us safety, but He has promised us Himself. Think of Israel walking through the desert with only a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. No maps, no guarantees, only His presence. It was not the comfort of predictability that sustained them, it was the nearness of God. And yet, how quickly they grumbled. How quickly they longed for Egypt again. Even slavery seemed more secure than trust. Does that not strike fear in you? To realize that the human heart can see miracles and still demand change. I tremble when I read those passages because they are not ancient history alone. They are mirrors of us. How often do we prefer the familiar sins that enslave us rather than the risky freedom of faith? God shakes us with this story. He lets us see how easily we choose lesser gods because they promise something visible, while He calls us to trust the unseen. Have you felt that restlessness in your own chest? That conflict between wanting to obey and craving control? It is there that God speaks loudest, not with thunder always, but with the terrible silence that forces us to decide. Will you follow the cloud, even when you cannot see where it will stop? Will you trust the fire when the night is long and cold? This is not sentiment. It is raw surrender. And it frightens me because surrender is not natural. It is terrifying. Yet here lies the paradox. The very thing we fear most is the place of true life. Remember when Christ spoke to His disciples and said, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow." The cross was not a symbol then. It was an instrument of death. The weight of those words must have stunned them, for He did not promise comfort. He promised a path that feels like dying, and yet it is the only road that leads to life. Here is the piercing thought. Perhaps what you fear to lose is exactly the thing you must release. And perhaps the silence you resent is the very space where God is drawing closest. I cannot read these stories without a chill because they tell me God is not tame. He is not an accessory to decorate my plans. He is a consuming fire, and He is jealous for the whole of me. Not fragments, not convenient hours, but all. Do you sense the weight of that? The God who parted seas is the same God who demands your surrender. He is patient, but not passive, merciful, but not soft. He is love, yet His love burns away illusions. And when you see Him as He is, not as you have imagined Him to be, the question becomes sharp and inescapable. Will you follow, even when every step feels like a risk? Or will you return to Egypt, Jaffa perhaps, but chained? This is the moment where faith is tested, where your story intersects with theirs, and it leaves you trembling because the choice is always before you: freedom or slavery, God or idols, life or death. And there is no middle ground. I once heard a story told in hushed tones by a man whose voice trembled with both awe and fear. He spoke of the night Jesus entered a storm with his disciples. The waves raged, the boat groaned, and terror gripped every heart. They shouted. They fought against the water. They thought the sea would swallow them whole. And there, in the chaos, Christ slept. His calm was almost unbearable, like an insult to their fear, until at last they woke him, their words thick with panic. "Lord, save us, we are perishing." And he rose, not with frenzy, not with frantic effort, but with authority. He rebuked the wind. He commanded the sea, and suddenly there was silence. The kind of silence that is heavier than sound, a silence that presses against your chest and makes you realize you are standing in the presence of something far greater than yourself. They whispered to each other, "Who is this, that even the wind and sea obey him?" And I tell you, that question still echoes today, because it is not just their question, it is yours. It is mine. When the storms rage within your life, and you cry out for rescue, do you believe that he is more than a teacher, more than a story, more than a gentle guide? Do you believe he is Lord over creation itself? I ask you now, if you feel the storm in your own life, if you have known the terror of nights where no answer came, will you dare to say with faith that he is here? Comment "I am ready," or even type the number 1, so that I know you are not only hearing me, but also choosing to stand in the boat with him. Your voice matters. Your presence is not small. It tells me I am not speaking into emptiness, but into hearts that long for truth. I cannot overstate how much that means. For even as I recount this story, I feel the weight of its demand pressing on us. For the disciples had to see that their fear was not the greatest danger. Their unbelief was, storms will come, waves will rise, but the greater question is, will you trust the one who rules them? And here lies the truth that unsettles. You may not always see him wake at the first cry. You may think he sleeps. But do you know what it means that he can sleep in the storm? It means he is never threatened, never undone. He is not overwhelmed, as we are. He is peace itself. And if he dwells in you, then even when the world rages, you can be held by the same calm that silenced the sea. I ask you again, do you believe this? Do you long to hold such peace? If you do, let me see your response. It tells me I am walking with you, not ahead of you, not alone, but together. And that bond is precious. Perhaps you too have whispered in dark nights, "Lord, save me." And perhaps you did not hear an answer then, but do not mistake silence for absence. He is nearer than breath, nearer than thought. He commands not only seas, but also hearts, and he waits for yours to yield. So let me know you are here. Let me know you are ready. And together we will step deeper into the mystery of who he truly is. There is a moment in the gospel that I cannot pass over lightly. It is the encounter between Jesus and the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. Her life was one long chain of suffering. She had sought help from doctors. She had spent everything she owned. Yet her body remained broken and her spirit drained. In the eyes of society, she was unclean, rejected, a shadow on the edge of the crowd. But she heard that Jesus was passing by, and within her rose a fragile hope, perhaps even a desperate gamble. If I only touch his garment, I will be healed. It was a thought both daring and trembling, for she knew she was not meant to touch anyone, much less a rabbi. Yet she pressed through the throng, each step heavy with shame and yet burning with desire, and then her fingers brushed the edge of his cloak. In that instant, something changed. The flow of blood ceased. Strength returned. Her body awakened, and Jesus turned and asked, "Who touched me?" His disciples were bewildered. "Master, the crowd presses against you. How can you ask this?" But Jesus knew. He felt power go out from him. He searched until his eyes met hers, and she fell at his feet trembling, confessing all, and he spoke words that cut through every chain of rejection. "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Those words were more than healing for her body. They were restoration for her soul. She was no longer an outcast, no longer defined by her wounds, but named daughter, beloved, and restored. Can you see how tender yet challenging this moment is? It tells us that faith is not passive. It presses through crowd. It reaches for the impossible. It risks being seen. It risks being misunderstood. Yet it dares to touch Christ. And he never turns away. This story is not locked in history. It presses into your life too, for many carry wounds unseen, struggles unspoken, years of disappointment that no one else knows, but Christ does, and his question still hangs in the air. Who touched me? And the challenge is clear. Will you remain hidden, content to brush against him in the crowd, or will you step forward trembling and confess, "Yes, Lord, it was I. I reached for you." In that moment, he does not rebuke. He restores. He gives back dignity. He speaks peace into hearts torn by shame. This is the way of the kingdom. Not only mighty miracles that silence storms, but gentle words that lift the broken from the dust. And the beauty is this: he does not heal from a distance. He lets himself be touched. He allows the unclean to come near, and in doing so, he reveals a love so profound that it challenges every barrier we build. You may think your struggle is too small, your wounds too hidden, yet in his eyes nothing is unseen. His garment still brushes against the world, his presence still moves through the crowd, and faith, even if trembling, can still reach him. So let the story of this woman remind you, Christ is not only Lord over creation, but also healer of the heart. His touch restores. His word names you beloved. And in that truth lies both comfort and challenge. Will you dare to believe it? Will you let his peace be greater than your fear? This is where the path of faith begins. Not in strength, but in trust. Not in pride, but in surrender. And always in his presence that welcomes the broken and makes them whole. There is a detail in the Gospels often overlooked, but carrying a blade sharp enough to pierce the soul. It is the moment when Christ entered Gethsemane. He did not lift a calm prayer. He did not speak with the unshaken tone we sometimes imagine. Instead, he trembled. His sweat fell like drops of blood. His soul was sorrowful to the point of death. He prayed to the Father, "If it were possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." What stuns us is that Christ did not approach the cross with cold superhuman strength. He approached it in fear, under a crushing weight no mortal could endure. What makes one shudder is that he did not hide his fear. He revealed it, so that we might know the path of faith is not about erasing weakness, but surrendering weakness into the hands of the Father. At that very moment, his disciples slept. Have you ever pictured that scene? The Savior of the world crushed in anguish, while those closest to him could not remain awake even 1 hour. This is not only an old story, it is a mirror held to our own indifference today. How many times have we slept while he called us to watch? How many times have we drowned our hearts in petty comforts and ignored his sorrow? And then came the soldiers. Judas walked forward to betray with a kiss meant to be a symbol of love, but turned into the sign of surrender. Here, the cruelty of the world is exposed, for even the sacred can be twisted into an instrument of deceit. Yet Christ drew no sword. He offered no resistance. Instead, he spoke one question that silenced the darkness. "Whom do you seek?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he replied, "I am he." That short reply made them step back and fall to the ground. In that moment, power erupted in the night. A single word undid the strength of an armed crowd, yet he did not exploit it to flee. He stood still, bound, and led away. Do you see? This is the paradox of the gospel. The greatest power is not to destroy enemies, but to embrace suffering for the sake of the weak. This is a truth modern logic refuses, for it clashes with the language of dominance. But in weakness, true glory shines. That is why Gethsemane is not merely a garden, it is the crossroads of shadow and light, where man longs to escape suffering, but God chooses to bear it. Can you gaze at that scene without trembling? Can you admit that in your own darkness, the words "not my will but yours" are the only way out? This story is not told simply for memory. It exists to challenge our courage today, to remind us that weakness, when surrendered into the Father's hand, can become the very instrument of salvation beyond anything we could imagine. Presses itself upon us when we stand before the image of Christ in Gethsemane. When we hear his trembling voice saying, "Not my will, but yours." The question is not about history alone. It is about you and me in this very moment. When the hour of decision comes, when fear swells like a tide, and when every comfort urges you to retreat, will you remain awake, or will you sleep as the disciples slept? This is not theory. This is the battle of every soul, for the cup is always present. In different forms, sometimes in the bitterness of betrayal, sometimes in the silence of unanswered prayers, sometimes in the weight of loneliness that feels too heavy to endure. What you do with that cup determines the shape of your life. Do you resist it with clenched fists? Or do you lay it down before the Father who sees beyond what you see? And I wonder, if you were in that garden tonight, what would you choose? The truth is, the garden has never closed. Its shadows still fall across every believer. Its silence still waits for those willing to pray. It is here, not far away, that your faith is tested and revealed. The world offers distractions. The world whispers that surrender is weakness. But the Son of God proved that surrender is strength when placed in the hands of the eternal. I ask you sincerely, do you feel the same tension in your heart now? That pull between your will and His? Do you sense that this very struggle has defined every saint before you and will define you as well? If your answer is yes, then I want to know you are with me. I do not want to speak into the void. I want to know the faces, the hearts, the souls who stand listening. If you feel the desire to stay awake, to resist the sleep of indifference, then simply let me know. Write, "I am ready," or even the number 1, not because words typed on a screen change eternity, but because they reveal something precious. They mark the step where your heart admits its thirst for transformation. It may seem small, But every great change begins with the smallest confession of desire. Do not let it pass unnoticed. Do not imagine that silence is safer. Silence has always been the language of those who chose the shadows. Speak, and by speaking show that your heart is alive, that you have chosen to remain awake. This is not about me. It is about you and God. But for one who shares stories, there is nothing more valuable than knowing you are present, that you are walking this road together, that you refuse to drift into slumber while the hour is pressing. It is a holy thing, a sacred thing, to know another soul has awakened, and I thank you. I honor you. I cherish that presence. Perhaps you doubt. Perhaps you say to yourself, my words are too weak, my heart too broken, my faith too small. But remember, Christ never asked his disciples for perfection. He asked only, could you not watch with me 1 hour? So I ask you, with tenderness, will you keep watch now? Will you lift your head? Even if your hands are trembling, will you let your soul whisper, I am ready? If so, then you have already begun to change. And if you dare to mark that change, even by one simple word or number, you are not just responding to me. You are answering the call of the one who waits in the garden still. What if the silence you feel tonight is not the absence of God, but his invitation to trust him beyond what your eyes can see? That is the sting of faith. That is the wound no human wisdom can soothe. I have seen many cry out, why have you forsaken me? And in that cry they discovered not emptiness, but the nearness of the one who bore that very same cry on the cross. If the cross were only a symbol of pain, it would crush us. But it is also the doorway into a hope that refuses to die. The nails did not only pierce flesh, they pierced the darkness that tells you your suffering has no meaning. The blood that fell was not simply loss, it was the payment that bought you freedom from despair. And I ask you, if the Son of God endured that for you, what will you do with it now? Will you let it pass as story, or will you dare to let it alter your very being? This is not sentiment, it is decision. It is the narrow road where everything is surrender. The world will offer comfort. The world will offer distraction. The world will mock faith as weakness. But the resurrection stands as the eternal contradiction. The great thunderclap that declares weakness is not the end. Death is not the master, and despair is not the final word. You must choose what voice you will believe. Will you follow the laughter of the crowd or the whisper of the risen Christ who calls you by name? There is no neutral ground. Every heart leans toward light or shadow. Every step either deepens trust or strengthens rebellion. And here is the truth that unsettles me and perhaps unsettles you. There will come a day when the last chance to decide will pass, when the door will be shut, and the words too late will echo with a weight beyond imagination. That is why I cannot leave you with comfort alone. I must leave you with urgency. The time is now. The hour is near. The choice is yours. Do not say tomorrow, for tomorrow has deceived more souls than any lie ever spoken. Do not say later, for later is the language of those who sleep while eternity knocks. My question to you is simple. What will you do with this Christ who would not abandon you even in the valley of death? What will you say to him when his eyes meet yours, eyes that once wept over a broken world and still weep over every wandering soul? The next steps are not about curiosity, they are about destiny. They are about the unveiling of truths that will confront you and comfort you in equal measure. If you have walked with me this far, then you know we are not finished. What lies ahead will demand courage. It will demand honesty. It will demand a faith that is willing to be tested in the fire. But it will also bring a joy that cannot be stolen and a peace that cannot be broken. Stay with me. Return for what comes next, because the story is not done. And when it unfolds, it may just answer the deepest cry of your heart.